Everyone, today we're talking about the statement that Jesus suffered under Pontius Pilate. I'll read a little bit from Mark 15. Pilate answered them, "Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" He realized this was out of jealousy that the chief priest had handed him over, but the chief priest stirred up the crowd to have Barabbas released instead. Pilate spoke to them again, "Then what do you want me to do with the man you call the king of the Jews?" They shouted back, "Crucify him." Pilate asked them, "Why? What evil has he done?" They shouted all the more, "Crucify him." So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas to them, and after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified. So a lot of people wondered, what is the Roman governor Pontius Pilate doing in the Apostles' Creed? Right? Why do we really need to know who crucified him? Well, it reminds us that Jesus lived in a particular time, in a particular place, that the incarnation has a historical context. The suffering that's mentioned here, though, I think it's not really just about the cross. It's all the ways that Jesus suffered through his life. You know, how much of what he and his fellow Jewish people suffered was due to Roman oppression and occupation. It wasn't the only problem that Jesus came to deal with, but it shouldn't be ignored. You know, Pilate is mentioned right as Jesus starts his ministry, so the shadow of the empire looms over everything that Jesus says and does, and it leads to the cross. And by the way, Pilate is not a sympathetic figure. He was a terrible leader. We know this from history, both in his cowardice and in his brutality. So don't feel bad for him. But what we see is that God didn't enter the world apart from history and politics, right? Those are the things that we want to ignore sometimes or say they're irrelevant to faith. Those things are part of the spiritual life. They were for Jesus and they are for us. And of course, how we balance them is complicated, but we don't ignore them. We don't just leave the real world, as we might call it, behind when we come to worship. And we also don't suffer in general. We suffer here and now from specific things. Sometimes it's because of leaders who are unwilling to stand up for what's right. Who'd rather satisfy the crowd than do the work of justice. But your suffering, our suffering, it all has a specific cause. Whatever the cause of our suffering is, though, Jesus meets us in it. He understands our experiences. He found a way to be faithful in his time and in his place, and you can too.